All right, let's talk Picard. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and we have a number of things. I have to say that the last episode of Star Trek Picard for this season is the most powerful Star Trek episode I think I've seen. I think that it beats The Best of Both Worlds Part 1. Part 2 was kind of him, but The Best of Both Worlds Part 1 was an excellent show. I think this was too. And I think because of the fact that they have dealt with a couple of things that they did not deal with in Data's death during Star Trek Nemesis. There are spoilers. So let's get that over with right now. There are spoilers, and I'm going to be spoiling it because there's too much to talk about in this episode that would have to be spoiled. But first, let's talk about a couple of things. A lot of people thought that Alton Inigo Sung was lore. In fact, I kind of thought that too, except there were a couple of things that didn't work with that. Why would lore have a golem? And why would he need to transfer his mind? He could just have another android built and move his mind into it without having to go through the big single neuron process that would be necessary in order to put a human in that. We at first thought that if Sung was actually lore, that maybe that golem was for Maddox. And I still kind of wonder why Maddox was leaving the planet to begin with. How did he end up somewhere else and not on the planet, not working with Sung? What was the deal? And so I had this kind of thought that maybe Sung was the bad guy, was lore, or at least a bad guy. And turns out that while he was on the side of his androids, when push came to shove, he was with the good guys. And that was good to see. Interestingly, his middle name, Inigo, was in Spanish, it's loved one, but in Latin, its base is on enigma, which is unknowable. And I think that the writers threw that kind of in to make you wonder whether he was lore or not. I think they kind of led us that way because we've seen Sung family members. There was one in Enterprise who first came up with the idea of artificial intelligence, and then they've had Noonien Sung depicted in Next Generation. So I'm not surprised necessarily that there were other family members, and this one turns out to be a good guy, and so that's good to know. Interestingly, also, the USS Zing has a background here. Why would they name a ship that? Now, Riker called it the toughest, fastest, most powerful ship Starfleet has ever put into service. That was awe-inspiring, I have to say. And I have to take my hat off to the special effects people. I have never seen so many starships on one screen ever before. Not Romulan, not Klingon, certainly not Federation. And this made a very good standoff. Riker mentions the theory of Algernon, which was mentioned in the episode where his former captain was trying to go into the neutral zone and get some secret technology out of his old starship. And the Treaty of Algernon, which was basically the peace treaty between the Romulans and the Federation. So that was brought up by Riker while he was making the veiled threats to the Romulans. It didn't turn out into a fighting war, but it certainly was impressive. Let's see what else. The Enterprise wasn't in this fleet, and there was a question to the producers about this, and they said, if we're going to put the Enterprise in, we're going to make it a big deal. We're not going to make it one of 1,000 ships, so or 200 ships probably is what was in the picture. So I'm thinking that probably will be for a different day to see what's happened to whatever version of the Enterprise they have by then. But at any rate, the Zing a big, powerful ship. Its bridge, by the way, was a redress of Discovery. Still nicely done, and nice to see Riker in uniform. seemed like whenever he mentioned in Nepenthe that he was in reserves, that as soon as Picard got out of sight, that he would call up Starfleet and say, "Yeah, I'm ready to put the uniform back on for a little while." And they put him as acting captain, so he's taken over the ship temporarily, specifically to go and rescue Picard. I have to say, a wonderful gesture on Riker's part, and not lost on Picard. There are some Easter eggs in there, of course, where Picard says engage at the end, and where actually Agnes mentions the Picard maneuver. And claims it was part of the Enterprise, and he corrects her, no, that was the Stargazer. And they came up with their own version of it in order to deal with the Romulans before the Federation came. Let's see. Also, they talked about, she did Make It So. And I've never seen anybody other than Picard say make it so and make it really work. Because really, if you look back at Next Generation, anytime Picard said make it so, it was usually after some long tech explanation, and Picard would say make it so, which was, to my mind, was I haven't the slightest idea what you just said, just go do it. And used by other characters, it never really worked right, even by Riker. Picard's, one of his final speeches in the episode, he says to be alive is a responsibility as well as a right. And if anything this entire series has been about, it's been about the nature of life. It was almost the thread that went through the entire Next Generation production. What is life and what is death? And Data has been, from the very first episode, the person trying to be human. And in the end, the way he wanted to be human was he wanted to be able to die like a human. He didn't want to live in this purgatory that was set for him while his neurons were kept active in a box. And he was able to get the proper goodbye that he needed. Picard was able to assuage his guilt, and Data made it very clear. I gave my life, you didn't take it. And that made all the difference to Picard. And in his speech to Soji, and that caused her to change her mind, was that what it's about to be human, what it's about to be living, is that you have to be willing to help other people, not just help yourself. And if there's not a more Federation, Starfleet, or Star Trek type of feeling, that's it. You do unto others. And so that's the last episode of this season of Picard. I also read somewhere that the hand-holding by Seven of Nine and Raffi was ad-libbed by the actors. So that may go somewhere, that may not. You never know. But I like the new crew setup where Seven is part of the crew, where they've got all the people back together and ready to go on new adventures, and a new Picard body who will not be wearing as much old age makeup as he did. Patrick Stewart is 79. He was playing 94. And I think in his resurrection, if you will, they didn't use as much old age makeup on him. And while they said that they kept putting him back exactly where he was, I think they pulled him back about 15 years. And that's not a bad thing either. So I'm looking forward to next season, and I want to know what you think about this episode. Why not do so in the comments? Next time, we're going to be talking about the book called A New Beginning, which answers some of the questions that have been brought up in the series because it was covered in the book, and we'll talk about that next time. Until then, don't go far.